So, I dropped my radio. This is a story about this was my second experience as a volunteer firefighter. My first experience, I did another video on this when I was a teenager in the little town I went to boarding school in, had a volunteer fire department and a junior firefighter program where they trained you and gave you skills and responded to calls and helped out as best you could as a juvenile, and I just loved every second of that. Subsequent to that, after going to college in a big city and working in big cities, I was not had the opportunity to join another volunteer fire department for decades. It wasn't until my mid-40s where I had kind of a midlife crisis, and I quit my job and went back to school and decided I'm going to do all the things that I've always wanted to do before it's too late. That was my midlife crisis, and one of the things was I loved being a volunteer firefighter. So I went back to school to get a master's degree in counseling, and I deliberately moved to a place that was in the area of the closest volunteer fire department I could find in the Austin area. And it was in south part of Travis County, which is the county that Austin is in, and it's in an area called Manchac. And it's spelled Manchaca, and you can tell people aren't local because they'll say Manchaca. It's Manchac. And I moved to rented a little townhouse, like right down the street from the fire station. And they welcomed me with open arms and said, "You are in luck. We're having our first volunteer firefighter academy ever, where you're going to be fully trained and you're going to be state certified, and you're going to get a certificate, and it's all free, and it's going to be fun, and great timing. It starts like next week. It's our first one ever." So, and then they said something interesting. They said, "You're welcome to do this training and respond to fires, but if you really are interested in being active with our fire department, you need to be medically trained." I said, "Really?" Because my only other experience in New Hampshire was we didn't do any medical stuff. There was an ambulance somebody called. I didn't know anything about that. But here, they said, well, 70% of our calls are medical. And if you want to participate or even respond to those calls, you have to be trained as what they call an EMT or EMT basic. And we don't have that training here, but we can send you out to get that training, and we'll pay for it. And I said, well, it's like, yeah, I guess I'll do that. I didn't know whether I would like it, but I certainly wanted to be active, and it seemed like a thing to do. So they sent me to EMT basic school, and I took to it like a duck to water. I discovered I was fascinated and loved medical stuff, and I excelled in that class. And before you could respond to a call, the requirements were actually quite stringent. You had to take this class, and it was a few months long. You graduate from the class, then you have to take a national test. It's called the National Registry, and it's a very difficult exam. But you take the test, and if you pass, you get certified as an EMT basic through the National Registry, and you need to be licensed by the state. And you would think, okay, now you're ready to go. No. That allows you to, there is a local test that you must take. Every area has a medical director where the emergency medical technicians work under that medical director under their standing orders or how you should handle various things. And you need to take the medical director's exam to know, so they know that you are familiar with their rules and regulations and protocols. So I had to take that as well. And I had to be precepted and trained within my fire department. In other words, someone fully licensed and able to respond to calls, I would be able to respond with them, and they would supervise me doing procedures on scene to a point where when they were ready to sign me off, I would be ready to be an independent emergency medical technician. Basic. It's basic level. There's more than one level. There's basic, intermediate, paramedic, and I think there was one below basic. I forget what it was. It's not important. But I was a basic. And you couldn't give drugs to anybody. You couldn't start an IV. But there's a lot of other things that you can do. Life-saving things. So, it worked like this. It was a volunteer department, so everyone had these little pagers that would go off, would start beeping really loud, and would go off when there was a call, and it would announce on a speaker where the call was and what it was. And we had a response vehicle that was a bright red fire truck with lights and sirens and radios and computers that you would sign out for a week at a time, and you would be responsible in the evenings for responding to medical calls in that vehicle. And other people had the option of they could respond from home and meet you at the address, and people often did. But when you had this truck signed out, you absolutely were responsible for going. And after everything, all the hoops I jumped through, I believe it was my first week. If it wasn't my first week, it was very early on. I had the support truck, and one night, I'd been signed off and everything. I'd been trained, but I was nervous, of course, because I was new at it. And the pager went off in the middle of the night. I'm sleeping in my bedroom. And the call was a cardiac arrest, meaning someone's heart had stopped for an infant. So a baby's heart had stopped beating. So I basically flew out of bed, grabbed my stuff, hopped in the truck, and quickly put the address in my GPS. And I'm driving, I'm sure, faster than I should. And terrified about what I was going to find and how I was going to handle it. And sure enough, I was the first one on scene, and I saw the house. There were people out front, and as in these intense situations, these memories, there are little snippets or moments that are vivid and stay with you as vivid memories. And the first one was as I probably ran across the street. I parked across the street for whatever reason and ran across the street to this house. I dropped my radio on the road. It was a signal to me. Luckily, what it said to me was, Rob, calm down and slow down. And I picked up the radio, and I didn't run. I walked with purpose quickly to the front door. They led me in, and on the floor in the living room is a baby that was not breathing. And I went down to the baby, and there was no heartbeat. And they give you a big medical bag with, even they have little tiny infant like bag valve masks and things to cover your face and everything. And I'm not alone in this, I guarantee it. When it's a little child like that, they call it BSI, body substance isolation, and taking care of that goes out the window immediately. So immediately my mouth was over the top of this baby's mouth, and I put in her breath, and I felt the chest rise, and I started doing compressions with my two fingers, and I'm doing breaths and compressions on this little baby. And this is the second thing that the second vivid memory that I have is I was very conscious of the warmth of the baby on my face as I had my face. I mean, I could feel warmth and, to me, life in this baby. And the second clear memory I have is after the paramedics, the Austin Travis County EMS paramedics, the experts, they would come, and as soon as they showed up, they would always take over patient care. They were the experts. And so they eventually came in and took the baby from me and moved it up to the kitchen table, moved the baby up to the kitchen table, and I remember seeing them work on the baby, and there's something I could tell about how they were doing it, that I knew the baby was dead and wasn't coming back. And that's, of course, what happened. It was sudden infant death syndrome. And that baby didn't live. The other memory is seeing the mother wasn't there when it happened. She was at her job, and I think she was like a fast food worker, because I remember seeing her sitting on the front stoop afterwards in her uniform, just in absolute total shock. And they say, and whoever they are know what they're talking about, no matter how much experience you have, and I had a lot of experience subsequent to that. They ended up sending me to paramedic school. I became paramedic, and later I became the chief of a paramedic service, and responded over those years to hundreds of calls. And you don't forget the children. There's something just so unnatural about the death of a child that anyone that I've ever talked to in this business has agreed with me that those child scenes and child deaths stay with you. Anyway, so that's my I Dropped the Radio story. Hi, I'm Dottie, and I need more subscribers. They're not out there, Dottie. They're in here.